Winning a deal with the right startup at the right time can mean a lot more than just another customer. It can mean income for you or your business for years, as the company and your relationship with them grows. However, achieving this objective in the past usually wasn't very easy. For example, Harvard and Berkeley research shows you need to connect with companies ahead of your direct competition, to win significantly more of the deals. In addition, many startups are low on available funds, so making sure the startups you were prospecting actually had the budget to buy could be a very
Therefore, being able to both learn about and connect with funded startups, ahead of your competitors, was previously either very time-consuming, expensive or both. In fact, to do it all efficiently meant paying at least hundreds of dollars up front, if not thousands, for a subscription. Even after all that, you were still often left without contact information and/or received notifications. Best startup companies with open jobs AngelList, LinkedIn and Indeed are all great sources to leverage if you are looking to look. Here are hundreds of thousands of startup jobs currently listed on their respective websites: Angel Startup Jobs, LinkedIn Startup Jobs, Indeed Startup Jobs. How to invest in startups. Best startup companies to invest in. 2020. The vast majority of money invested in startup companies comes from angel investors, accredited investors, venture capital funds, institutional investors and corporations. Only 1/3 of 1% comes from non-accredited investors, via equity crowdfunding portals. If you're looking for top companies to invest in outside of the public markets and are an accredited investor, you have a wide range of options. To be an accredited investor, a person must have an annual income exceeding $200,000, or $300,000 for joint income, for the last 2 years with expectation of earning the same or higher income in the current year. Some of the top unaccredited investor platforms to invest in include WeFunder, Seed Invest, Start Engine, Next Seed, Republic, Microseed, NextSeed. Some of the top accredited investor platforms to invest in include AngelList, Equity Net, Crowdfunder, Fundable, OneVest.
Startup company news. Here are some leading sources for startup news and to create a list of business ideas. MIT Startup News, TechCrunch, Entrepreneur, CNBC, Mashable, Geek, Wire. The Business Journal's Startup News. Startup company accelerators in the U.S. 1/3 of top startups that receive a Series A funding came from an accelerator. Here are portfolios of some of the leading accelerators. Y Combinator companies. The 500 Startups Portfolio, 500 Startups Application, Techstars current portfolio, AngelPad Alumni Portfolio, DreamIt Portfolio, Launchpad. LA companies.
startup companies in the U.S. numbers. While there are no exact numbers on the number of organizations that can be strictly considered startup companies at any one point in time, outside financing, beyond friends and family, is a milestone that most startups will look towards achieving. If we only qualify a company as a startup upon reaching this milestone, between 10K 20K new startup companies in the US reach this criteria every year. Generally speaking, those that have seen the startup movie before agree a startup business moves from being known as a startup to an enterprise when it has a scalable, repeatable business model, a product that is ready to serve a large addressable market, the resources and team to succeed in serving a large addressable market. As you can imagine, the bigger the opportunity, the longer a company may still be called a startup, even if they are no longer that small tech startup they once were known as. For example, in the transportation industry, it may take years and billions in funding for a company to be able to ready to take market share away from major competitors. Conversely, some companies with disruptive technology have scaled to enterprise status in a fraction of the time and with far less capital.
Startup companies versus small businesses. Though sometimes they are similar in headcount, small businesses are quite different from startups. Unlike the startup meaning described above, small businesses are driven by profitability and stable long-term value. They aren't looking to disrupt the universe, but to operate a cash flow positive business for the long term, with minimal risk. A small amount of startups start operations as a typical small business, then transition to ultimately become a startup company. However, this transition is not typical and usually requires significant changes in go-to-market strategy, financing and team. Best US and international startups to watch in 2020. Several other organizations have created lists of startup companies to watch in 2020, including Inc. 7 innovative startups to watch in 2020, Computer World, hottest enterprise tech startups to watch in 2020, Built in Seattle, startup companies in Seattle, Built in Boston, startup companies in Boston, Built in San Francisco, startup companies in San Francisco, Built in Austin, startup companies in Austin, Built in NYC, startup companies in New York, European startups to watch in 2020, Indian startups to watch in 2020, Chinese startups to watch in 2020, Israeli startups to watch in 2020, African startups to watch in 2020, Middle East startups to watch in 2020, Latin America startups to watch in